Hi everyone, it's Andy from Hobby Headquarters. Well, I've got an exciting kit to build for you guys today. This is the Ammo by MIG King Tiger. And what this represents, there's actually two different versions inside this kit. There's a very late, like April of 45 version, plus there's a fictitious July of 45 version in here, which they've changed the engine deck around. They've added rangefinders on the turret, as well as a 10.5mm gun and infrared system on it. So that'll be the one we build today. Now, this is basically the Takom kit, the one that had the full interior minus the full interior now. So it'd be a lot easier to build and not having to worry about putting all the interior stuff inside. The kit looks pretty easy and straightforward, and since I've already built the other one with the interior inside, this one should be a snap right here. So, excited to get going, so let's get started. Okay, we're ready to start construction on this vehicle. We have the lower hull here, and as you can see, it is a bathtub style hull. And one thing I should point out to you too, this is an ammo kit, but all the parts are made by the company Takom. In fact, this is the same lower hull for the King Tiger that we built a few years back with the full interior. You can see it's got a lot of the little pieces inside here set up that you could put all that stuff in. But luckily, there's no full interior on this kit because that is a lot of extra work right now. As you can see, we've got one set of the wheels and drive sprockets and all that stuff all set up. And this is how it comes on the sprue right here. So it's very easy and straightforward. There's an A and B side of each one of the road wheels. We have all of our suspension arms, couldn't get that word out, all the suspension arms right here. Now there are two different ones, and you can see that they're mainly done by the two different sizes. And I'll let you see a little bit of the instructions right here. And yes, we are starting on number 8. This is an unusual kit that you actually start building the upper hull first, but I'm so used to always building the lower, we're going to start on that first. This is what's a little bit unclear sometimes to some people, is the way that they've got this set up. You have an A32, which is the short one, and A29, which is the long one, and then it just says ×4 and then opposite. What you do is you do every other one. So the long one goes for the very last one, and then then you do a short one, a long one, short one, long one, and you'll figure it out after time. But one other person has asked me about that too, and they didn't get it right away. But it is just every other one. Then it's just a matter of taking, and we've just put the two road wheels together, sanded them down on the edge here, and that's it. That's how easy. This is probably about 20 minutes worth of work, just getting it all cut out and sanded. And then once that is done, we will lay the hull down and actually get all of our suspension arms out first. And actually those are all the shorties, those are all the long ones. And then Takom has a little pin right here, or a little nub that sticks out that corresponds in here, so you can only put this in the proper height. So once you glue that in, you're ready to go with that. So that's what we'll do right now. There's one more of the long ones. And just put a little bit of the cement on here, and we are in business. Just that easy. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to get all of these suspension arms glued into place, and then we will go ahead and start attaching all of the wheels. I also have to obviously get all the other ones for the other side. I wanted to show you guys what it looks like on the sprue. And so very simple and straightforward. So I'm going to get all that done right now, and we'll come back and move on to the next step. Okay, we have all the suspension arms, and I thought I'd come back to this and actually show you something that's actually very important if you want all of your wheels to line up. When you push the suspension arms into place, it has a tendency to sometimes to think that they're all lined up. But what you want to do is just take something hard and make sure you go and push it in. And you'll notice a few of them look like they're seated, but they can actually rotate slightly. And this will keep all of your suspension arms nice and straight. And that way your wheels will be nice and straight, and you'll have that much less trouble putting your tracks on. So just make sure each one of them all lines up. You can see even right off through this. And like this one is slightly skewed out. So you just want to make sure all of these outer ones, for example, they're all touching, so that means they're all in a straight row. Okay, we've got the all the road wheels into place, and I spent a little bit of time making sure all of them are very straight in line like this here, which when I was showing you on the suspension arms, it's very easy for a few of the wheels to get all kind of wonky looking. So you want them to be as straight as possible. Also, they recommend that you go ahead and glue the drive sprocket into place. I am going to highly recommend that you don't do that, and that is because when you go to put the tracks on, it is really tough to put the tracks on if you can't have a little bit of play in this right here. So let's leave this off for now. This I actually just pressure fit into place, so that's ready to go. We also put all of our end caps on in here. Now we are just going ahead and fitting these pieces right in here, as you can see. You pop right in there, and we'll glue that into place. And then once that gets glued into place, that basically, I've got to do some sanding on this one too. That is going to be the piece that holds the upper hull, locks that in there. So I'll get this piece sanded up right now. Also, you might be wondering, I have this little piece in the back, in the middle of the here, and that is to keep the hull straight while the glue is drying for all the tracks. Because if we take this out, you'll see that there's a slight tendency, because it's so thin, the bottom plastic, that this wants to curl in here, and if it curls in here, it's actually not making it straight. Now once we do put the big back panel back here, that'll square, and we get glue on it, that'll square everything up. But for temporarily, I was just keeping this in here while everything was set up, just so I knew that all the wheels were on the ground and everything was lining up the way it was supposed to. Now that we have the lower hull done, we can start assembling the upper part of the hull. And because this is that kit that had the interior parts, it has some of the scale thickness armor up front here that we need to glue into place. Get some of this done here. And we're just going to put a little extra adhesive on this, since this is a fairly large piece. We don't want to have anything pop out. We'll let that fully dry, and then we can go ahead. We've built up the machine gun, the bow machine gun. That'll slide into place, but I'm going to wait for this to fully dry. We've also gone ahead and glued up the two little hatches on the top here, and that is quite a bit of the majority of it. And the only other thing we have to do is glue on the side skirts, and they have the little marks that will all line up and get them all to go. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and let this dry a little bit, get these side pieces glued on, as well as the bow machine gun, and then we can actually attach the two. One other quick thing, in the early part of the instructions, they tell you to put all of the tools on and some of the other accessories. We're leaving all that stuff off to the very end. I like to paint and detail all that stuff separately and then apply it later. Okay, as it goes for the tracks, I was hoping to see if I could make the tracks off the vehicle like I have in other things so we can paint them. But I don't see any way that it's going to be really easy to get these on and off, especially once we put the top pieces on. So I had to go and basically assemble the tracks right in position where they're supposed to go. Now, the tracks are going to fit on here, and there are definite specific tracks for each side. I didn't look at the instructions the first off, and even the individual tracks, which these need to be cleaned up a little bit. There is a left and a right track for these, so just be very careful when you're putting them all together. That way you keep them in order. And it's basically, there's a couple of lengths of track that go there and there. There's one that goes for the top, and then it's just a matter of building these around. So it's not difficult. It's time consuming, definitely. But once you get done with it, you'll have a nice little sag that goes over the entire piece. And we'll show you a little bit more in depth once we get to it about painting around that. But we'll be able to paint the entire thing. The NATO black that we do is our base coat for the tracks. And then we'll be able to go in there with our airbrush and just, easily start painting up the road wheels. And then with dirt and grime and things like that, you won't notice any of the other problems if there's any overspray or anything like that on it. So I just got done gluing these together, and I got to just pat them down a little bit. I've been using things like a sanding stick shoved inside here just to get them to line up. So I'm going to let these finish drying and lining up, and I'm going to start working on the other side. We'll come back. Unfortunately, it's so hard to film these because the way we have to get in there. I'm not going to have any filming of doing it, but it is pretty straightforward for it. Okay, we have all the tracks all built up now. Now it's time to mate the upper and lower hulls together. And slides together pretty easily. One thing I do have to let you know is, pop this apart, is I did have to sand down this little area right here. For some reason this lip was catching and it wasn't allowing these two pieces to meet up properly, but we just knocked it down a little bit and it pops right into place now. Now on the inside in here there are some tabs, hopefully you can see it in there, and you want to make sure you get all of this lined up very well as you glue it, because you don't want to have any of the upper part of the hull to have a bow to it, because there's not a lot of meat back here to, you know, to keep it straight. So we want to keep it as straight as possible. We're going to get all this glued up real tight, make sure it's nice and straight just like this, and we'll put some clamps on it, and then we'll come back and work on the next piece. Okay, we let the hull dry overnight. I put a little extra cement down the whole length so it's a nice sturdy piece. We've also attached the rear plate back here, and as well as the mufflers and the shrouds that cover them up right there. It was very simple and easy to do. Now it's time to work on the rear engine deck. And we are going to be doing the July 45 version, you know, the what if, where it has the 10.5 millimeter gun, the infrared, as well as this revised engine deck. Now, the first thing you want to do is we're going to apply the center of the engine deck, and then we can come back in afterward and hopefully have enough room. Yeah, that should slide in together and it'll pop underneath there, and we glue that one down as well as the other one here. My only opinion would be it probably would be easier to go ahead and glue these into place first and then drop the center piece in, because you can see there's a lip that goes all the way down the middle there. And I just glued those little hooks on. We want to keep those. See, that's going to be much, much easier. Now also, these revised engine decks do not have any grates on top of the rectangles, but it does come with some photo etch for the round ones. And I just cut this out just before turning on the camera, and we're just taking a sanding stick and sanding down that little burr from where it meets up. And then we will apply just the smallest amount of super glue. And just put the tiniest little bit. And if too much comes out like that did, you can just squeeze the bottle back the other way and it'll suck up most of it. Because we want to use just very, very little of this so we don't make a mess anywhere. I like to keep my hands completely away from this stuff too, because inevitably you end up gluing your fingers together. And avoid putting any super glue on the center of the piece as well, because the center is all mesh on this particular piece and it'll clog up your mesh. And remembering that there is a front and a back side to this. You want the side that looks like it has the mesh on it. Let me see if I can keep my hand out of the way here for you guys. So we're only going to have like a second to make sure it's lined up. Put a little pressure in the middle, and boom, you got your radiator covers on there. So I'm going to go ahead, glue all these parts together, and that'll basically complete the majority of the lower hull. That piece will be ready to go, and now we can start working on the turret. Okay, now I've gone ahead and I've put together some of the sub-assemblies for the turret, and we're now installing some of the pieces on the outside here. Show you how some of these go together. Making sure all this stuff lines up properly. Get that attached, we can go ahead and attach the turret top, the roof, and you'll just notice right here we're going to just dry fit this. You can see there's a little bit of a warp in this piece of plastic, but we'll be able to get rid of that with a little clamping and gluing, but we'll do that in a second there. Now we also want to go ahead and assemble up the part that holds the gun barrel. And best way to do this is actually put them both on at the same time. That one's really tight. And then we can go ahead and glue both of them into position just like this. Now, this piece right here is the same whether you're using the 88 or the 105 millimeter gun. So that doesn't change at all. Then when it comes to the gun, like I said earlier, we're going to use the bigger 10.5 millimeter gun. Now this barrel was 2 halves, and we've glued it up, and now we're just taking some of the foam Tamiya backed sandpaper and just going ahead and getting rid of the seam out of that. I've been working on that for a little while, just twisting, trying not to get any flat spots on it as we go. Then we have the mantlet, which is all keyed. And that, of course, is keyed inside here as well. And finally, the muzzle brake, which was 2 pieces. It was very unique the way they molded this up. Very cool the way they did it. And then that, too, has a little definite way of going on. And the barrel goes together actually pretty quickly and easy. Now, I did start putting some of the parts for the upper part of the turret on here, including all the little covers. Each one of these little covers for the vision ports were all individual, as well as all these other little pieces. And we have to do a little bit more cleanup on it, but I want to give you guys a general idea how it's going to go together. The turret itself is pretty simple after that. Now we do have a lot of hooks that we need to put on the side here. Those hooks are going to hold all the spare track that go on this kit. So, and also we're going to go ahead and put the range finders on, which will mount right on the sides of the turret. But we'll do that after we get the roof on. So I'm going to go ahead. This is all very simple and straightforward. We're going to get all these parts glued together, finish some sanding on it, and we'll come back and show you what it looks like. Okay, I finished up principal construction on the kit, and we've gone over it with a coat of Tamiya's gray primer after we fixed up a few little flaws here and there that I wanted to take care of. We put all of the hooks on the side here, and got everything ready to go basically. So now we are going to go ahead and spray the entire model with the NATO black, including the tracks, wheels, everything on it there, and that'll start off as our shadow coat. Okay, we take a little break in the painting process, and that is to show you how the paint job is coming along. Now, as you can still see a lot of the shadow in this red oxide primer. And the reason we don't want to go super heavy is now we're going to put our second coat, our camouflage coat. The look we're going for here is that the vehicle rolled out of the factory in red oxide primer, and then they camouflaged it with like this late war 1944 and onward Dunkelgelb, which is a much, much lighter Dunkelgelb than the other one. And we might even put a little bit of a green into it too, a small amount of green camouflage. We'll see how this comes out first. Now we're going to put a fair amount of this on here. Thinking about 50% of the vehicle is going to get covered with this. We're going to leave the barrel alone. The late war barrels, or the barrels themselves, would come from the factory in this gray kind of primer. So it's as if they slid it right in. Didn't paint it. We might put maybe a little bit of the Dunkelgelb though, camouflaged over the top of that too. So let's go ahead and start painting that. Okay, I finished up the camouflage, and purposely, as you can see, when we were putting it on, we didn't put it on in a very even coat, and that was because we wanted it to look like it was kind of haphazardly sprayed on. Now, with that, we've also clear coated the entire model as well. Now we're going to go ahead and put some decals on it, and there is just a limited amount of decals on it. We're going to put the number up here. On the instructions for the similar tank, they show the decal going up on here, but I painted this the dark yellow color, so that decal won't show up too well. So we're going to go ahead and put it on the barrel. And then for the body of the vehicle, it's very simple. It's just one cross on the side there. That's the extent of the decals. But we'll put a little Mark Fit Strong on them and let them soak in. We'll put one more coat of dull coat on it, and then we'll come back and start weathering this baby. Okay, now we're just going ahead and using our chipping color with a torn foam brush. We're just going to put quite a few scratches on this, mainly on the dark yellow paint. Although we call this dark yellow, it's not very dark yellow, but it's going to be as if this vehicle seen some city fighting, crashing through buildings. It's really just kind of tearing up the paint job. Now, you'll notice that on the dark yellow color, we're using our chipping color, which I'll put the formula down in the corner down there. But when it comes to the red oxide color, we are going to use just NATO black done the exact same way, where you just dip the foam brush in, and then off camera here, I'll show you what I'm doing. I'm just blotting it on a paper towel till you get to the point where there's just virtually nothing left on it, and then you can start hitting it in different angles, and there's still just enough paint on there to create some small scratches, and this will be like scratches in the red oxide primer. Not too heavy on that, because usually the primer is a stronger paint, you know, to resist corrosion, but hey, even that will come off. So, and the NATO black is a nice contrasting color to the red oxide there, and you can even put a few of those even on, kind of mix up your type of scratches even on the dark yellow area. Well, this is going to take a little bit of time because we're going to go real slow and just kind of build it up over time. So I am going to go spend a little bit of time doing the entire vehicle, and we'll come back and move on to the next step. Also, I just thought I'd show you too, we're going to do some extra amount of chips on these corners. You just imagine those getting the most amount of wear and tear, and just slowly let it build up. And also we can take a fine paintbrush, and if we want to create some bigger scratches, don't want to put too much paint on in there. You can do little things like this all over the vehicle too. Bigger chips in the paint. Now we are going to go ahead and put some dirt and grime and rain marks and some little bit of rust on here as well. And what I'm applying now is just a thin coat of odorless enamel thinner, just to keep the surface wet. Makes everything streak a little bit easier. And then we're just going to take a fine brush, and the first one I'm using is Streaking Grime for Africa Core, which is kind of a grayish green color. And we're just going to put a few little dots all around the top here, and you can even do some of these longer ones. And then we're going to use a little bit of rust color, a couple little dots of that around. And some streaking grime, some darker brown color. And then just taking our big wide flat brush dipped in thinner again, we're going to just start taking down some of these streaks. And I'm just going to go over it and softly just pull those lines down to get them ultra thin. And you can see how the gray really sticks out against both the dark yellow as well as the red oxide primer. Now, what I'll do is kind of flash forward ahead. This is the side I've done already and let that set up, and we're kind of working on that still, but you start to see the rust stains and the wash stains of like rainwater coming down, and just a little bit of dirt and stuff start to streak down the side of the vehicle. So this obviously is another process that takes a little bit of time, but you get the general idea. It's a matter of just wetting it, putting the dots on top, and then just streaking down. And if you don't like the way it looks, you put a little extra thinner on, you can pull all of it off because it is enamel. It's not going to damage the lacquer coat that we put on underneath it. So we have quite a bit of time to keep messing with it. And then when it comes to like the top areas right here, what I like to do is put just a little bit of the wash, whatever color we choose, and kind of just stipple it in, and it kind of makes nice random dirt marks and rust marks, things like that. So I'm going to go over the whole vehicle right now, and we're going to dirty it up a little bit more. Okay, now that we've got most of that blended in together, what we're going to do is I like to take a old toothbrush, dipped in a little bit of streaking grime and a little extra thinner, and just we're going to, from the bottom down, up, I should say bottom up, we're going to just create a few little dots of dirt and grime, and they come out real light because we added extra thinner, and you can have a little of them splash up the side there, and you can see them quite a bit right now because they're still wet, but once they dry they just kind of leave like a subtle little staining on the vehicle that really has a tendency to tie everything together, and you just want to go lightly on it, not too much on the top, mainly on the lower parts of the hull. And I'm just going to take a quick second here and show you like a little area once you get the chipping and the rusting and the little splotches on it. And that's still drying, so it's even going to become even a little bit more subtle as it dries. But you can get a really nice effect of a really beat up vehicle. Okay, we carefully flip the vehicle over now, and we're applying a few different colors of wash, mainly a little bit of streaking rust, streaking grime, but very, very thin down with enamel thinner, and that is just so it is not too bright. And we can even take a little bit of our gray tones, kind of modeled it together there just to get it looking like a variation of colors. And after that is on there for a little while, we're going to take a little bit of our light sienna and kind of just sprinkle it up on top. We don't want to mix all the colors together. We can kind of lightly blot it, so we have some areas that are thick and some that are thin. You know, I know it all looks like one massive color right now of stuff, but when it dries, it will dry out to a variation of color, especially with the light sienna on it. So once that gets dry, we will come back, knock off any of the excess, and it'll leave quite a bit of it still inside all the little crevices of the track. And we will go over the entire set of track and do all this right now. Well, here we are. Here is our completed model. And I'll just go over a couple of the last little minute things I did on it. After we let all of the pigment dry on the tracks, we went around with a little metallic powder and just on the very front of the tracks, scuffed them up a little bit, as well as also took a little bit of track wash and in down through here using our toothbrush and a real thin down track wash, which is like kind of a blackish brown, and just spritzed a little bit of some dots on it there to kind of break up the monotony of just all of that dirt showing on there. We did knock off some of the excess. We also did put a little rust wash on the tailpipes there. But overall, I am very happy with the way this vehicle came out. At first I wasn't too sure about the red peroxide primer with the real light dark yellow on it, but I think it came out really well that way. And it's, reminiscent of what the box art looks like. Now, you'll notice that I don't have the infrared unit in top there, and it turns out I thought the infrared unit mounted in front of the cupola. Turns out it mounts in the cupola, and a little bit of glue got inside on that and is sealed it down, which, because I normally do seal down my cupolas anyway. I'll probably break it open, but I didn't want to do it until actually I finished filming the video, just in case I damaged something on the inside there. But all in all, it's a great kit. Like I said, it is a Takom kit to begin with an extra sprue. This ridiculously long 10.5 millimeter gun is just crazy. And just a fun kit to put together. It took probably about 3 days of actually building to get it going in there. And that's working, not non-stop on it. So what I also thought I would do is, since the box art shows it going over some train tracks, I remember I had this diorama that I built up a while back and thought this is perfect. I mean, it's a large vehicle on this diorama, granted, but it looks really cool with the, the knockdown building, the train tracks, the vehicle going over the top, and it's just a great piece all the way around to have. Now, like I said, I did build this quite a while ago, but it's still holding up pretty well, putting different vehicles on. So, hey, I want to thank you guys as always for watching, and please stay tuned because we have many more videos coming.